everybody. Welcome to Powerful Stuff. Powerful Stuff is your one-stop shop for inner and outer connection with a little bit of playfulness, with a little bit of cheekiness, so you can leave the episode with a little bit more insight into yourself and a little bit more power than when you started. And I'm your host, Meredith Baker, leadership coach and also facilitator. And also just, sweet potato, guitar, Taylor Swift advocate. So today we have one of my absolute besties, Angel Desantis. And Angel and I met in yoga teacher training, back in 2017.
Yeah, 7 years ago, something crazy.
7 years ago.
A long time.
Yeah. And I knew we were meant to be friends because she called me Mare instead of Meredith. She's like, hey, Mare. And I was like, wow, this cool girl in the training is calling me Mare. I feel honored. But Angel not only is one of my best friends, also an incredible yoga teacher, an incredible coach and facilitator herself. And something that's very unique to Angel's story, she left a cult when she was 21. So had grown up indoctrinated in one way her entire life. And then through her own tools, through her own self-inquiry, has rebuilt her own belief system to be completely empowering and serving not only her life, but now helping other people do the same. And I just think it's so incredible and remarkable. You single-handedly deconstructed and then rebuilt your brain. Deconstruct to reconstruct. Yeah. And I loved your process. You called it BYOB, build your own brain.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for you to help us build our own brains today.
I love it. Thank you for the intro.
Wow.
Yeah, I feel powerful already.
Oh my gosh, I feel powerful being in your power.
Where do I start?
Well, I would love for you to, now everyone knows where we started as friends.
That's true.
But you just your initial inkling of how your first BYOB kind of angel experience happened, or maybe just giving the listener a little context of leaving the cult. What were those first few years like?
Yeah.
Being in this whole new world, and then how did you start to slowly
rebuild?
Okay. Yeah.
So the cult, because everyone always immediately is like, what was the name? It was called the Children of God, and I was born and raised in it, and I left when I was 23. So, wasn't a good time. There were good times and the bad times, but overall, growing up in a cult is, I think, a net negative experience. So then leaving, because I had no identity, I had no sense of self, and I had no tools. It's you leave the situation, but your mind still continues to run in the loop that's already set up, which is, cult mindset. And there's no self-identification thinking. It's all group thinking. And so I just kept that mindset until I started reading. And I started reading outside books because we had inside books that we were allowed to read, but we weren't allowed to read outside books.
And the inside books were produced by the cult?
Yes. Yeah. All their literature we were allowed to read. Not the Bible, because then we might come up with our own ideas about the Bible, but their interpretation of the Bible, that was fine. But anyways, once I was, I think 27 was when I first started. I picked up a book and I was like, okay, let me try to read this. Because some books were really, really dense. So I had picked up books like Harry Potter or novels because they were stories. So my simple mind was able to understand story. And I felt connected still somehow to story of the human experience. I didn't understand why, but I read simple story. And then when I was 20, maybe 28, I picked up The Art of Living translated by Sharon LaBelle as Epictetus. And it was
classic.
Yeah, classic. And now I buy it and I just give it to people like candy. But that was my first foray into philosophy. And then that book was super easy because it was very short. So I could read these bite-sized things. And then it was small enough to digest. And so I would think about it and be and then put it back down. And then the next day, read another page, be and put it back down. But then what I started doing, and then I have these little mala beads which I never wear mala
I
beads,
love
but
them.
I
I'm
love them
honored that you
too.
wore them for Powerful Stuff
Thank
Day.
you. I didn't do it on purpose, but here we are.
Here we are.
Spirit knew.
108 prayer beads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
um, but what I would do is I would read a page of from The Art of Living, and then I would try and take one of their thoughts and like make it shorter. So sometimes in The Art of Living, it's like a paragraph, and then sometimes it's a whole thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so I would take it and try to distill it into one sentence or one statement. And then I would take the beads and then I would just say the statement, move a bead, say a statement, move the bead, say a statement, move the bead.
Wow.
Um, and I had to do it quick to start because my brain would fight it because I had all of my conditioning of like,
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to think well of myself. I'm not allowed to have my own thoughts. I'm not allowed to figure things out or have thoughts that are, quote, like doubting that would take away from my faith.
Mm-hmm.
So when I would do this, I would have to like rush through the beads, but it would keep me present. And I would just like race through and like repeat, 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 repeat until I was done. And then I would come out and be like, whew. And then I would have to settle my nervous system because I knew that I had done something, quote, wrong
Right.
that I wasn't supposed to do. So it was this sort of like self-empowerment work. And then I realized that I could use that framework because I was like, oh, I've hacked the system. I've hacked my own brain where if I do this and I do it fast, I can run in front of the thoughts that are trying to like catch up to me to stop me.
Right.
So then I
There are
was
thoughts that are
like,
like, wait.
I know, yeah, like you're not supposed to be doing this.
Yeah.
So then I realized, oh, I can actually not just come up with thoughts based off of philosophy. I can also come up with my own thoughts about like self-worth. And then I read Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown.
Gosh,
And
another classic. We need the Angel
I
Starter
think
Pack.
the combo of those two were so good because philosophy is very like headstrong. It's very logical. And it sort of gave me like, I guess, the masculine layout for the brain. And then Brene Brown is very, I think, feminine and very caring and caring for the soul. And so I think the combination of those two found me at the perfect time where I was able to grow both. So then I took like the framework of what I had done with the philosophy, and then I started putting it into thoughts about being enough. So I remember the first time I read on the page, like Brene Brown saying, you're enough. I like closed the book and I like threw it. I was like, whew. Like I knew that I shouldn't have read that because all my conditioning was like, what the fuck are you reading? And I was like, oh my God,
Right.
I shouldn't have seen it. And then I had this sneaky thought of like, what if you took the beads and you like ran in front of your brain and just said, you are enough, you're enough, you're enough, and like ran through the mantra as fast as you could before everything catches up to you. So I did that. I sat down and I did the beads and I ran through. And usually like I'll take a breath and I'll move a bead. And if I do it that way, it takes me like 10 minutes. And it's a nice little mantra moment and I feel nice. That was like maybe 2 minutes top because I was just like, yeah. Just like quickly in front of your brain. And then afterwards, I remember feeling like shaky and I just like went to the kitchen and had a glass of water and I was like, okay, like I did it. And then I knew that once was not enough and I would have to do it again tomorrow because I was like, I know that I did it, but I don't believe it. I had to run in front of my body, in front of my nervous system, in front of the thoughts. But I had done it. And I was like, okay, on some level, it worked, even though I feel like I did something wrong. And so the next day I did it again. And once I found that formula, it was like, okay, now I can I tell myself that I'm kind, that I'm good, that I'm beautiful, that I'm valuable, that I'm worth something, like all these things that if you grow up in a healthy environment, you get that on some level. Your parents or your teachers or
Somebody's telling you.
someone, your friends, somebody's going to tell that to you. But I had missed all that. So then it's like, how do I build myself up from from underneath the ground, not even ground level, but from being so far deep underground? How can I, one step at a time, start to notch up? And so I used that method. And then at some point, I also started to think, okay, if I can create my own thoughts, how do I vet them? How do I make sure that they're good thoughts and they hold? Because I had so many thoughts.
Right.
And as I was trying to like build new ones, I was like, okay, how do I how do I do this? How do I unplug something? And then before I plug something in, make sure that it's good. Because it's like, if you think of a house, it's like you have to take down the whole house and pull up the foundation. And before you lay the foundation, you want to be like, all right, is this ground even good?
Right.
Like,
Before I just build a whole house on
what's
it.
that process? And then as I'm, do I use wood? Do I use steel? I don't know what they use in construction. Those are the only two things I know. So now we're out. But I was thinking about that, of like, as I'm laying the foundation of my brain, what thoughts do I want? How do I vet them? So I thought, okay, I'll take a thought and I'll try and pull it in both directions and see where the breaking point is. And if I can take a thought and I can pull it very little and then it breaks and it like doesn't make logical sense or human sense, then I won't put it in the foundation. But if I can take a thought and I can pull it pretty far in either direction before it fails, then that's a good one. And what I realized through that process was that everything does have a breaking point. Like most things have a breaking point. But there are things that you can pull pretty far before they fall off, and they only fall off in like really weird contexts. Like, for example, like water is good for you. Mm-hmm. This is the simplest one to use. And there are so many contexts in which like you can pull that very, very far before you hit the context where water is bad for you.
Right.
So if I make the statement like water is good for you, most logical people who are not jonesing for a fight will be like, yes, water is good for you. I
agree.
And you're going to have, some people who are like, actually, and they'll have a very exclusive context in which water is bad for you.
Right.
But as a general rule,
it's good for you.
Water is good.
Yeah.
So it was about finding thoughts like that and pulling them and finding their breaking point and then being like, okay, I understand the context in which they would break. And so let me create arguments for both, like right and left, but then sort of stay in this middle center where, for the most part, this thought or this statement is logical and true for most brains that are that would understand without needing to pull to an extreme context.
Right. And as you were doing this experiment, like what was happening in your life, like outside of it? How is it showing up, like outside of like the practices you would do, like alone, and how you were showing up in the world in this like 3 or 4 years outside of the cult?
I think it made me really curious because I realized there's this sort of understanding that like most of the things that I think are incorrect. And so let me not try to believe my own thoughts so much and let me listen to other people. And the thing about growing up in a very religious environment, I think the thing that is dangerous is that it gives you very black and white thinking. So it's either or.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that I really tried to manage during those years, is like, just because, because like some of the Christian ideologies, fanatical Christian ideologies, is that like you're either for me or against me.
Right. It's very, like black
and it's
or
like
white.
God or the devil. And it's like, Madonna or whore. And like, there's no in between. There's no gray. You're one of those two extremes. And so what I really tried to manage was my judgment of other people. Because it would be like, we'd be hanging out and then you'd be like, oh, Angel, let's get a drink. And then my brain would be like, wow, so she's trying to get me to be an alcoholic, you know? And then it's like, okay, manage that thought and be like, calm down. Like, we don't need to believe that one. Let's either join and see what happens or say no, thank you, or something. But I don't need to react to this super extreme thought that's already built into me. And that is already, I think the strange thing about it is your initial reaction, or not your initial reaction. It's not your gut reaction, but it's like your thought reaction is incorrect. So every initial thought reaction that I'm having,
you knew not to trust it. You knew to take it through that, which I love. And just to put a stamp on that right now of like, I feel like everyone in our country needs that right now with oh my gosh, all the polarization. And I feel like you leaving the cult and doing this work on yourself is such a and cult ideology. It's obviously like a very pronounced and poignant example of how a lot of us actually, like the traps a lot of us can fall into in our everyday of having judgment instead of curiosity, because the black or white is the safer option for our brain.
Right, totally. Because it makes more, I think, it feels safer. Like,
Yeah.
I need to know if you're trying to get me to be alcoholic or not, and then that's the thing that if I'm in black and white thinking, that's where my brain jumps to, is like, which one is safe?
Yeah.
As opposed to if I know that I'm safe and I trust myself to not, you know, be an alcoholic after one drink, then it's like, okay, then I can be there and be with you and experience the experience without wondering whether or not you're going to get me and like take me somewhere.
Hmm.
Because that's, now I understand, like, that's on me. Like, who I am is my choice. But growing up the way that I did, who I was and how I acted and everything was not my choice. It was like dictated. You are this and you have to be this or that. Um, so it was a really interesting couple of years. And I think outside, a lot of my relationships went through very interesting phases. Like, there was a lot of me trying to shun people who were still in the black and white thinking. And again, because I'm still in that black and white thinking, I'm like, friend or foe? And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, now I'm going this way. So now they are foe.
Right.
And now I need to stay away from them. And now I'm going this way.
Which is so interesting because it's
Yeah.
like, or we get out of something, but then we can still have that same
Yeah.
like projection onto those
Totally.
people. Because that was, or just to rewind it back a little, that was going to be like my question of like, for those, that initial, like, how did you even get the initial ping to leave the cult when you were still in that thinking, and this
Yeah.
like happened 3 or 4 years later? And like,
Totally.
for those first 3 or 4 years, were you like wanting to go back, or were you like, I know this isn't right, but you still hadn't kind of come to this like exercise?
So I think that this is where it's really important to discuss. Angel, that sounds so clinical. This is where it's important to bring up the different types of intelligence.
Yeah.
And there's like head intelligence.
Yeah.
And there's heart and body intelligence.
Right.
And in my head, my thoughts and everything, and the way that I thought, because I thought badly, I knew that I shouldn't leave. I knew that I was doing a bad thing by leaving. I didn't want to leave, but I had a boyfriend at the time, and he wanted to leave and get married, and go to school, because you weren't allowed to go to school in the cult.
Mm-hmm.
And also marriage meant nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, no, I want it to mean something. So let's leave and then let's get married. And logically, I knew that was a bad move. I knew that God was going to have to punish me, because that's what I was taught. I knew that, like, he gave them their request, but sent leanness into their soul. So I knew that, like, even though I wanted to be with him, then I would actually be really sad with him, because God would have to punish me. And like, that's what a loving God does, is he punishes you if you step out of line.
Right.
And I knew that I was uneducated. I knew that I had no documentation. And so thought-wise, mind-wise, it was a very, very bad decision. But in my body and in my heart, it was the right decision. And I knew that. And I can't say how I knew that.
Yeah.
It's just, and this is something that I think is really interesting. And I taught this today, coincidentally.
Oh my gosh. Synchronicities abound.
I know. Where, back in the day when we didn't have Google and books and all of that, you would know something was true because of how it felt in your body.
Yeah.
And that's how you had to judge character, and that's how you have to judge things. And like, women's intuition is because you can feel a lie. It sits differently in the body, and something is off. And so I think that was my first ever ping of like, I knew that what I was doing was wrong. I knew it was incorrect. I was really scared. And then this other sort of intelligence was also present.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that I would be safe with this person. I knew this person loves me. And I knew that it would be okay. Even though I knew God was going to have to fight me and God was going to be against me, something else that was not the God that I recognized felt peaceful.
Right. So it was your first time listening to your intuition in a way.
Very, very much so. So that's how I left, and I felt really, really guilty. And so I was still trying to I'm still going to pray. I'm still going to, because the cult had different levels of membership.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm not leaving. I'm just going to a different tier of membership. But then you had to tithe, and we had no money. So I was like, I guess I'm not going to be in that tier of membership. So yeah, and then I think that you just exist as you know how to exist. And like we were living very hand to mouth. But in the cults, they teach you that Jesus is coming back at any moment. So my brain didn't develop to see time
You were just like day to
day
day.
to day.
And were you scared at all during those 3 or 4 years,
A
or like,
hundred
or just
percent.
like
I
what's
was,
going on?
no, I was
Because you were
scared
like,
all the time.
yeah,
And I was really scared because I knew that punishment was coming. And so when my husband would go and do something and he would say, I'm going to be home by 9 p.m. If he wasn't home by like 9:02, I would like really freak out and be like, oh my God, like God got him. He killed him. And I would be like, blow up his phone and be like, where are you? Where are you? I was super, super anxious. And if there was like a knock at the door and it would be like the FedEx person, I would take a knife to the door just to like to answer it with one hand behind my back
oh
because
my
I
gosh,
knew that
yeah,
punishment was coming because that's what I was told. And again, it's sort of this journey that you have to take with the brain and the body. And, one exists within the other, and they both have their own intelligence systems.
yeah,
And you have to heal both and somehow bring them together. And then once they operate together, then you can get to the heart. But
yeah,
they've got to heal on their own.
and then
And
create
then
that clear
somehow,
channel.
right, right, bring them together. So, yeah, it was wild.
Wow. And then kind of during that time when you found like the Epictetus book and you started
Mm-hmm.
doing the mandala beads, like I know you started off as an au pair,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
then what was like that? What were like the new thoughts that started to come in when you started to see like the vision for like
Yeah.
what your life would be after those 3 to 4 years of really like living hand to mouth, living day
Yeah.
to day?
I mean, so I was a nanny for a long time, and it sort of worked out perfectly that when we moved to Austin, I had 3 kids under 3. I got the first one when she was a newborn, and then by the time I left, I was with 3 kids under 3 because they had brought in a friend and then they'd had another baby. Really wonderful family, and it was the very first family I saw that liked their kids. I'd never seen that before because I had grown up in a cult and everyone had a million kids and they didn't like them. They had them because they had no choice.
Right.
So I remember watching this family and being like, they're leaving work early to come home to their kid. And I was like, what? Like if they leave early, they can go surfing or they can go this or they can go catch up with their friends, but they would race home to their child. And I just never seen that before. Um, but it's worked out so that I was able to take teacher training, yoga teacher training. And I had started yoga and
Just like on a whim, or what
I
was
had
like
started
the
it
catalyst?
in Hawaii on my honeymoon. And I had a friend at the time who was a yoga teacher, and she invited me to come take the class. And she said, "Well, I'm the teacher, so if you don't like it, you can leave, and I won't take offense."
You
And
don't
so I
like it,
was
you can
like,
leave.
"Yeah,
But I love that she says it like
yeah."
in a
So
friendly
for me,
sense.
it felt safe because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I didn't want to go places and be bad at things because then I'm like, if I'm bad at things, I'm not worthy of love, and I don't want I don't want to not be worthy of love.
Yeah.
So let me just never try anything new. Um, but that sort of safety net, I remember being in chair pose because it was a 90-minute heated Ashtanga class and
What a
being in,
great first
oh my
class
gosh,
to
trial by
start.
fire.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at my thumbs because, you have your drishti point. And I remember just exhaling. And I felt like I was dying, but I was like, oh my God, if I can exhale, then I'm okay. Then I can take another breath and I can just exhale again.
Yeah.
And every time I exhaled, I felt good. So I was like, okay, let me just wait for the next exhale. And that's how I got through the class. So when I got back from that, then I ended up in a yoga studio here. Well, I would practice at home for like a year before I had the courage to go to a studio
Mhm.
because I didn't want to be bad. I didn't want to be a beginner at a studio and then shame myself there. Um, so by the time I went to the studio, I had already had a practice.
Yeah.
And there was a flyer that said teacher training. And I knew that yoga was the first thing that I felt like, oh, I could do this for the rest of my life and not get bored because I was so interested in it. And it was working with the body, and I had never worked with my body before. And working as a nanny, I was like, this has a this
Yeah.
has a very big cutoff frame, and I think I'm at it. So
Right.
I was like, well, what's the next thing? And I was like, oh, if I could be a yoga teacher, I I love it, and I think I would be good at it because I want people to know how it feels to be in their body.
And was that around the same time you were doing the mandala exercises, or
No,
that was
not
a little
yet.
after?
So I found my way, I think, to to like confidence and the ability to learn something new through the body.
Oh, through the yoga
Yeah.
training,
So
through yoga.
through yoga, I started to realize like, oh my God, I'm capable of growth because my body started to do things that my mind knew I couldn't do, but I would listen to the teacher and attempt the thing. And then all of a sudden I was doing all these things that I like logically I knew I couldn't do them because I had all the thoughts of like, I'm incapable, I'm stupid, I can't do this, I can't do that. And then my body would do all the things. And I was like, what?
Your
like,
body's like, I prove you wrong.
I would be really confused and I would like cry whenever I would do something that I knew that I couldn't do. Because I was like, what does this mean? Because I knew I couldn't do it, but now I can. So like what happened?
Mm-hmm. And just to put a pin in that too, like I love that you say that because I feel like that's everyone who is always like, oh, I could never do yoga because I'm not flexible. It's like you actually could and actually probably need it more than most people.
Fair.
But yeah, it's like the incredible thing about it, like you just said, it's like you breathe in a pose for a few minutes longer and then you can touch your toes for the first time. And it's just like being still with yourself and you end up having these like breakthroughs that, like you said, maybe were clouded by like self-limiting beliefs of what was, you know, perceived as possible.
Right. Like what I knew to be true and the new evidence that I was receiving were like contrasting. So I was like,
wow.
Crazy.
Okay, so the yoga started to like plant the seeds. Oh, change is possible. I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
I'm doing it. You did the yoga teacher
training. Then once I realized I'm able to learn things, then it's like, okay, well, maybe I can then pick up a book and learn something new. And also being in the yoga community, I think was really important because I got exposure to like a huge range of the human experience. Because like growing up in a cult, it's like very limited. And then I left and I was a nanny and I have one family then, one outside family as an example. And then I didn't really make any friends because I'm, you know, kind of a weirdo.
What? I'm like, in my eyes, you're the most popular magnetic girl.
Now, yes. But I was very like cagey, super introverted. I knew that there was something off about me. And so I just didn't. And even people would be kind and try to connect. And they would be like, oh, you know, invite you and your husband to dinner, or invite you here, invite you there. And again, my thoughts knew that they were lying, that they didn't actually like me. So I would decline all of these like really lovely offers. So I just didn't make any connections.
Isn't that so funny how our thoughts like play tricks on us like that? Because I do feel like, just like that in particular reminds me of like some like ways that people self-sabotage of like, oh, I've heard and had other clients or people like this in the past where they're like, oh, I don't have friends. I wish I had friends. And then they get invited to things and they constantly flake or decline. And then it's like their inner saboteur being like, see, you don't have friends.
Totally.
And like reaffirming that negative belief through sneaky self-sabotage. Totally. But yeah, so I just wanted to like double click on that.
It's so true.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is like now I know I was doing that. At the time, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I was just like, I knew it. I have no friends. This is my punishment.
See, I was right.
Exactly. We love being right. But then going into the yoga space, and I had this wonderful manager who I think saw where I was at. Because I was very open about the first time that I told anyone I grew up in a cult, I was in yoga teacher training.
Wow.
And once I said it and that burden was off my back, and that at that point, I had been out for maybe 5 years, 4 or 5 years.
How was that sharing it for the first time?
Oh my God, it's terrible.
Like,
I was like shaky and like my voice was breaking because they had said in yoga teacher training, they were like, come and share something like truthful. Because we were studying the Yoga Sutras and I forget which Yoga Sutra it was, but they were like, come share how you've had an impact. And so the thing that I shared was like, I grew up in a cult. And then once my husband and I left, about a few months later, because people had seen that we could do it, because they always tell you can't do it. Mm-hmm. They let you leave whenever you want because they know you can't do it.
And right, because you don't have any like education, skills, money. Yeah.
And we had left and we had done it. And so about maybe 5 to 7 months after we left, maybe like 5 to 7 other of our friends also left because they realized that like, oh, it is possible.
Yeah.
And they had seen him like We left, we had made it, we had been able to pay our rent between the two of us, and he had gotten into college and he was doing good. So we had somehow figured it out. And then they saw it was possible, so then they all left. And so that was the story that I shared, is like, I think we've had a good impact, because then a lot of other of our friends have left too, and they're also enrolling in college. And I hadn't enrolled in college, so I still felt like beneath, but I was like, it's not my story because I'm not good, but like, here's a story about like how my husband had impact. And then afterwards, everyone was like, shit, like,
Yeah.
what? And I was like, yeah, it's not a big deal. Like, it's fine. It's like not even me. And they were like, no, it is a big deal. And like, wow. And I was like, oh, really? Like, oh, okay.
Did
And
it make you
then,
feel safer having shared it? Or like, oh, I
no, it
can
didn't.
share it. Oh,
Oh
it
my
didn't.
God.
You had like a
I was
vulnerability
like, oh.
hangover.
And then the next day I came in and I was like, oh, they're being weird to me. And they were not being weird to me.
Right.
But I was like, oh, they said hi and then they sat over there, and my brain
Yeah.
was like, now they know. But then,
Right.
of course, by the end of the day, I was like, oh, I think it's the same. I think
Right.
it's okay. Um, and then once I started telling the truth, I realized I didn't have to keep track of all my lies. And that for me just was like,
Weight
such,
lifted.
such a weight off my shoulders. So then when I was in Austin, because that's where I started teaching, I think that my manager at the time, his name was Brendan, I think that he saw where I was. And so he was very like encouraging and being like, oh, you did a great job in class. Because I would tell him, like, if I do anything bad, tell me. And he would tell me when I did something good. And I would get like, don't say it. Like, no, don't. And I was like, no, you don't just need to tell me like good things because you think I want to hear it. Like, tell me the bad stuff. And he was like, Angel, there was no bad stuff. Like, you did a great job.
Oh,
Um, and
what
so
a good
I know he
manager.
was so lovely.
I hope his ears are ringing
I
right
hope so
now.
too. And so that really, really helped me. And I feel like he kind of kept an eye out, um, and sort of assisted me through navigating, because I was in a new city, I was in a new job. But he was very supportive, which I feel was like, I think if I had gotten a bad boss, like it would have been terrible. I think the healing journey would have taken a lot longer. And so everyone who along the way was like kind and genuine, and like looking back now, I'm pretty sure everybody saw where I was at except for me, because I was like, I'm covering it up. Nobody knows.
Right. Isn't that so
It's so
hilarious? Where we're
funny.
like, no one will be on to my scent. And
Totally.
everyone's like, bless your
Everyone knows
heart.
that I'm normal.
Yeah.
Um, but I think people saw, and they were just really, really kind. And they
Yeah.
saw the gaps in like what I was lacking. Like I was lacking a lot of kindness in my life and people on my side and people encouraging me and everything. And so being in the yoga community and just being surrounded by really wonderful people, um, I think sped up the process by a significant amount. And then once I started combining that with like my own inner work, then things started to change really quickly.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say, I mean, and yeah, I want to go into the next step around that. But even when I met you in 2017,
Yeah.
I was like, how many, like, that must have been what, like 5 years after you started doing that kind of work, or four?
Ooh, okay, let me think. 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yeah, 5 years.
Oh my gosh, because like
Yeah.
already when I met you in 2017, I'm like, this is a wise sage. And you've since been like an unofficial therapist who's seen me through many situationships that
I
were
love
very
it.
toxic.
Ditto.
And I'm glad it's reciprocal. But by that time, I was like, Angel's like this wise sage who's lived 100 lives. And it's
Yeah.
so funny. That was just like 5 years after you started doing
Yeah.
that work on yourself. But the way it's so funny because it's like the way you presented like the curiosity, the like your own tools. It's like you had no ego about it. And
Mm.
and I feel like in a way it's kind of like it reminds me of this card on the animal spirit deck.
Oh, I love it, which I just bought today.
Oh my God,
Of course I did. Thank
congratulations.
you.
Well, it reminded me of the earthworm
Ah,
because the
yeah.
earthworm is like this idea of like the new person
Mm.
in a situation where there might have been like experts or people who have been doing it one way for a long time, but it
Yeah.
actually brings you like the fresh perspective and the powerful
Mm.
luck. So it's almost like because you were taking nothing for granted and questioning everything,
Yeah.
you were able to actually have like so much more depth and so much less ego than like people who had not grown up in a cult or who
Yeah.
had been studying philosophy for ages. Do you know
Right.
what I mean?
Well,
If that
I
makes
think
sense.
for me, I didn't have the identity around it. Like
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I need to be a philosopher or I need to be a teacher or a leader, which we hear a lot here in Venice.
Right.
So
Like
many
the
people have
God
offered to
complex.
lead me. And I'm like,
Same.
thank you so much. Absolutely not.
Yeah. They have one profound experience and they're like, I want to lead
I'm
other
going to
people
guide
in this.
you. Yeah. And I think for me, doing all this stuff, I just wanted to understand what was happening.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that I was trying to learn all this stuff so that I could be like, guys, I'm healed now, and here's how to do it.
For
Link in my bio.
$9,999.
I just wanted to feel normal
Yeah.
and to feel whole because I felt like I had such a big deficit. And so I was like, I just want to feel, when Brene Brown says I'm enough, I think she means it. I
Yeah.
think she believes it. And I would say it, but I was always trying to get in front of the thoughts that would eventually catch up to me and be like, no, you're not. And you're like, no, shut up.
They're like, I've prepared a presentation on why you, in fact, are not enough.
Here's a PowerPoint. And you're like, no, not another one.
Yeah.
And so then once I got to the stage of like, oh, I am enough, then I was like, okay, that was all I was searching for was just like that sort of inner confidence. And then you have, of course, the whole journey of like, oh, I fixed it. So now I think I'm enough. So now I'm never going to run up against that again because now I've put it in my foundation.
And we're
now
on the other side.
We're on the other side. We're healed.
Yeah. And that's like, well, yeah. So I want to pinpoint like for your own experience, like what that was like and when things started to change quickly. But just a note on that, I think that's so fucking hilarious. We're all fucking guilty of it.
I know.
But like person goes to one ayahuasca experience or one like Hoffman process or whatever. And it's like, oh great, well now I'm healed and I can just put it away. And I'm like, the way I think about it, and I'm sure like at different points in my own journey I've like had that attitude, but the way I think of it, it's like going to the dentist. It's like you don't go to the dentist and you're not like, great, well I had my teeth cleaning, so I'm never gonna brush my teeth again. And I feel like the journey doesn't end, and it is just like the best thing we can do is continue to approach it, but with curiosity of what can I find, or even if I've done this thing before, what new thing could I learn this time,
right? And
to continue to always be like a student in our own self-growth.
I agree.
Yeah. So funny though, because just that's like the LA way. We love it.
We love it.
You guys are fucking adorable.
It's entertaining.
And us ourselves as well.
Well, we actually did it though. We're healed. We're fixed.
Yeah, that's why you guys are listening to powerful stuff. Yeah,
because now we're leaders.
Oh my gosh. All of that's to say.
Oh my God.
All of that is to say, we love it. I mean, doing one journey is better than doing none.
That's true.
And
yeah, very true.
And it's continuing to keep it going.
Yeah.
But what I will say, is like once you started doing the mandala beads, you're doing the yoga teacher training.
Yeah.
Like, what started to shift quickly? And then I know we have like a few little arcs.
The journey continues.
Yeah. But yeah. So like you're starting to do the mandala beads. When were you starting to believe I am enough? What was that looking like in your outside world?
I think again, the relationships where all my new relationships were lovely and they were healthy. And I made a really good friend who was a man. And I had never, like, everyone in the cult was like, some of them were good, but there was also this danger element because it was a sex cult. So you would just never know when the friendship would switch. And then they would turn into a predator. So there was always this heightened element.
Right.
And I made really good girlfriends. I've always been able to I've always felt really comfortable with women. It's always been so easy and lovely.
Oh my gosh, agreed.
But I made really good male friends. And it was healthy. And they were supportive of me. And they were kind. And I never felt unsafe. Mm-hmm. And I started to believe that, like, I deserve safety. I deserve for women and men to treat me kindly. And I deserve to be spoken to kindly. And I deserve for people to listen. Because I was used to women listening and not men listening.
Right. What gave you that initial safety to like have that first male friend? Was it the work that you were doing? Was it him continuing to show up and you realized there wasn't any risk there?
Yeah, I think it was both, because it's always a combination. But like when I was in Japan, I had felt safe with men because I grew up in Japan, side note.
Mm-hmm.
I had felt safe with men because for Japan, and I just got back from Jakarta, so this was a great reminder. For Asia, I am like let's just say in a 1 to 10, 10 being incredibly beautiful, I'm like a 2. And so I was never desired romantically or sexually or anything in Asia. I was told I was ugly a lot.
I can't even
and that
fathom that.
And that was fine for me. So I had a lot of male friends who were just completely uninterested in me, because I was not the beauty standard. And so I felt really comfortable and I was friends and it was very easy. And then moving to the US when I was 19, and then expecting that sort of safety and easiness with men, I was very incorrect in that and sort of paid the price by getting into a lot of very risky and unhealthy and unsafe situations that I didn't understand what I had done to get myself in those situations. But then, of course, cult mindset and growing up in this sort of male-centered thing, it's like, well, then it's my fault. And then what did I do to deserve it? And so then coming out years later and then finding these men that felt, again, like friends, like back to what I had initially recognized, that men and women can very easily be friends as long as there's like a respect involved and we, the humanness in one recognizes the humanness in the other.
Yeah.
And so it had felt in that moment when I was friends with these men in Austin, it had felt like that. Like I was like, oh, that's right. I cannot be like in this sort of other or subservient or this second class citizen.
Yeah.
I deserve to be heard and seen and loved as is without any expectation of like, now I owe somebody sex or now I owe somebody like just a little bit, where it's like, well, I bought you dinner. So, and this sort of rape culture that exists in some Christian philosophy.
And unfortunately too, like shades of that like definitely were prevalent in my college.
Yeah.
With the men controlling the social scene. Oh, well, I put you on the list
Totally.
for our party.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's crazy. Like we see it in all different shades in all different types of society.
Yeah. It's prevalent in like any patriarchal society, which is most societies.
Right.
But I think then expecting to be treated like that by my friends and by my husband, and then that is where shit went wrong. And that's where, because I was mostly friends with a lot of ex-members, because, you've gone through a similar experience.
So you're bonded.
Yeah. It's trauma bonding at its peak.
Oh my God, you were in the cult, me too.
I know. Yeah. And then it's like, who was your dad? Oh, who was your mom? Where were you? Were you in ASCRO? Were you in PACRO? And it's like, oh, this language that you immediately you understand.
Yeah.
So anyways, then those relationships started to become very contentious. So I ended up getting divorced because then I had realized like, oh, I deserve someone to be with someone who likes me. And then I started seeing other people in relationship. I had a good friend, Mary, who she got together with her husband at that time. She was getting engaged and she was getting married, and they would have fights and he would apologize to her and then he would treat her nicely. And I was like, what?
Like, that's crazy.
What? Or she would get mad at him and then he would come be like, okay, tell me what the problem is. Like, I don't want you to be mad at me. Like, what is it? And I was like never in my life had I seen that. And then again, also being around men and realizing that they could be very like loving and they could create a safe space. And then looking at the men that I knew, and like, even though they were married or even though whatever it was, they were still dangerous. And I was still very disrespected to this day. So then, and then it's that thing of choosing, like, what am I going to choose for myself? Because if I step outside of the marriage and I step outside of all these relationships that we all share this common
And it
bond.
was like familiar and
Yeah.
yeah.
And I knew that making the decision to separate from this person would immediately, I knew they would all pick him because he's the man, so he's right. And
Right.
also I was the Jezebel who was leaving. And that was not like, there's just this sort of sense of like, as a woman, you stay, you put up with it, you put up with anything. And he wasn't bad to me. He wasn't cheating on me. He wasn't hitting me. So that made him a good husband automatically.
Right.
And so I knew that making the choice to leave, I would automatically lose this whole swath of people that I still knew. And then I would be out in the world alone for like the first time in my life.
Which also, like, what was that feeling like? Because it's like you left the cult with him.
Yeah.
So it's like
So I still had never been alone.
Yeah.
It was like, first of all, it was everyone in the cult versus the world. And then it was like him and I versus the world.
Yeah.
And then it would be me
versus the world.
Versus everybody. And so that was a decision that I made, and I consulted my head and my heart. And they both were like, yeah, you got to go.
And that was how far into like doing your readings, when like your
that was
affirmations?
2 to 3 years after, because I started like reading at like 27, 28, and then I filed for divorce when I was 29 because I was like,
Whoa.
I'm not going to be married when I wanted to be like free for the first time in my life by the time I was 30, because I'd never been free. None of my decisions were my own. Because even like I had made the decision to leave with him, but then I was with him and he made the decisions.
Right.
Where we lived, where we went, how much money I was allowed to spend, and, things like that.
And so as you were reading these things, you were starting to get like larger intuitive like knowings of like, oh, right. Shit.
And just the self-confidence of like, oh, I can form a good thought.
Yeah.
I can make a good decision. I can make good friends. And I can create a space where I'm safe and people support me and people like me. And I feel like I add value to them and they add value to me. And so I think once I knew I could create that.
You were seeing it in the yoga and the friendships there and stuff.
And it was all stuff that I had created because he didn't want to come into the yoga community and he didn't. So I had built a friend group on my own.
So it was like proof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was sort of like that was the prototype. And I was like, oh, shit.
This is a good prototype.
This is wonderful, wonderful people. And that the common denominator is me. And so now I know what I'm capable of. And I can pay my own bills and I can make my own friends. And I can choose to be with people who like me and want to see me succeed. And if that is the choice, then I have to step out of what I'm in. Mm-hmm. And then it's just me, like in the world by myself. And I'll see how it goes.
We'll see. I'm like, part 2. I know we're going to do it all here. But I'm like, your life needs to be like a reality show.
Crazy. Sometimes I'll look back and I'll be like, what was that?
Yeah. I would have loved to see, like, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in like your first yoga class because you're just like one of the yoga greats, It would have felt like we were watching a slice of history.
So crazy. But yeah, so then it was sort of heartbreak is its own journey, is its own ceremony.
Mm-hmm. You felt heartbreak leaving him?
Oh, completely. But I had to.
Yeah.
And so then, because the heartbreak is so immense, I went into this space of just like thoughts. And like, if I have logical thought and I can execute on them, that's it. That's all I need. And so the heart sort of shuts down because I'm like, I really don't need you anymore. Like, thank you so much. You've done a great job, but look at you. Like,
you're pathetic.
Yeah, you're in shambles. So now the head is going to take over and now it's going to run the show.
Right.
And the thing about that is that it works.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I think it is a state that can move you forward quickly. Like, if you want to go fast, if you want to go quick, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others.
Right.
And I needed a bunch of shit to happen quick. And so I did it alone and it worked and it was fantastic until you hit a wall.
So what was the wall that you hit? Like what?
I think I hit multiple walls, but continue.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, well, yeah, because you had kind of done this, and we'll break it down for the listener toward the end of like how they can BYOB themselves, build their own brain. But yeah, like once you kind of started to have the affirmations, you made the decision to leave him.
Yeah.
you're like, okay, I am in a heartbreak ceremony, but I need to go quickly. Like, what were the tools that you were using at that time? And
It
then,
was the same. It was just the like, what is a logical thought that I can create?
uh,
How can I put it in my body and like run it through my brain and then just believe it because it's true and then move forward. And then I also think the self-soothing and the like still worthy of love.
yeah.
Even though I'm stepping away from love, that doesn't mean that I'm unworthy of it. I'm not choosing this because I don't believe myself to be worthy of it. It's because I believe that I actually deserved to be
Worthy of
loved
it.
in,
Yeah,
yeah, in a different way.
totally.
Yeah.
And then what was the wall that you hit, or what were the walls?
Oh my God.
And was I
Multiple,
when was when
multiple,
where was
multiple
like where were
walls.
you internally when you met me? I'm
Oh,
curious,
I
like
think when I met
in that
you,
process.
I think the wall that existed when I met you was still, and this is something my therapist said to me, and the way that my therapy goes is my therapist suggests something to me, like, Angel, you might be blank, 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 blank. And I say, no, that's totally incorrect. Like, thank you for your suggestion. You're wrong. And then anywhere from like a few weeks to a few months later, I'll be like, oh, wow, he was right. So that's how that goes.
Isn't
Um,
that so funny?
and
Always happens that
I
way.
know. And I think where I was when I met you was still like curious.
Hmm.
But this is something that he said is he was like, Angel, you're easy to get to know, but then you hit a wall and then you're very difficult to get to know and no one actually knows you. And I was like, that's not true. I'm very friendly. And he was like, well, I didn't say you're not friendly. I think you are very friendly. But he was like, but I don't think people know you because I don't think you show that.
Mm.
And you go through a lot of stuff alone.
So at the time you met, that's where you feel like you were at the time you
Yeah.
met me, where it's
Because
like
at the time that I met you, I think we shared like
you'd moved from
fun
Austin to
stuff.
LA.
Yeah. And I think we shared like fun stuff together.
Yeah.
But I don't think I let you ever until like 2021 see
Wow.
what I was going through. Like I didn't share anything in the moment. I shared things once they were done. So I
Right.
would
You shared
share.
musings with me after you had already
Yes,
picked apart, like, and
right.
shared the learning.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what was what was your reasoning behind that at the time where you're like, this is just because I have to go at it alone because I left my relationship and so like no one would understand or I don't want
I
to let
think
them
I
in. What was
just
like the message internally
I
there?
think the message internally was I don't want to be a burden to others. And I had seen like there was a lot of hurt in the divorce. There was a lot of hurt with a lot of friendships ending. And so I was like, I don't want to hurt people. And so in order to not hurt people, I'm just not going to share what I'm going through because that's when it hurts people.
Hmm.
So I'm just going to wait and I'm going to process and I'm going to go through all my stuff where it doesn't harm people. And then I can share at the end how I decided to do the thing. And then I can make sure that you understand why I decided to do the thing and how I decided to do
Yeah,
it.
like convincing.
Yes. Once
Yeah.
I've been through it and I understand why I did it, then I can just share with you why I did it or what I did and why I did it. And then to me, that's bonding.
Right. Which
Yeah.
is so interesting because I guess, or like from my perspective, you had always been such a great friend and like a
Mm,
wise older sister, if you
so
will.
funny.
But then I do remember, and I'm wondering if it's the same instance we're both thinking about
Probably.
the one, and we'll chat about it
Well,
offline.
yeah, I
But in 2021, when you did share something with me, and you're like going through it, and like maybe you asked me for my thoughts or something, and I
yeah.
was like, wow.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm
And we had been friends for like 4 years at that point.
yeah, and I was like
Yeah.
so honored. You know what I mean? I was
Yeah.
honored that you were, it, from my perspective, like valuing
Yeah.
like my opinion. But yeah,
Yeah. And that was the thing is for me, I didn't even think like, oh, I don't value your opinion, so I'm not going to let you in.
hmm,
It was more a like, I want to keep you safe. So because of that, I don't want you to see how like ugly I am and what my thoughts are when I'm going through something.
right,
I want to just be this like shiny, happy person for you because I love you. Um, as opposed to if I actually believe that I'm worthy, like as is, then I would just show up as is,
right.
you
So, what
know?
was it like for you when you finally decided that in 2021? Like, what was your new messaging? Like, why were you like, I have to lean into this
I,
to break past XYZ
yeah, I
walls,
don't think it was that. I just think I felt like I trusted you enough that, like, well, I think Meredith loves me enough to not, like,
run away?
yeah.
Yeah.
And And then realizing like, oh, that's actually how relationships are built, is you actually have to show yourself. And then, just showing you a little bit more, and then being like, oh my God, she's still not running away. And also seeing how you treat other people as well. And being like, okay, I don't think she's the type of person who would judge me harshly because I've never seen you judge other people harshly. I think in the way that our relationship goes, you're always being like extra nice. And I'm always like, Meredith, cut it off.
I don't judge
Leave it.
people harshly unless you and I go to another person's yoga class together.
Totally.
No, I'm
Never
joking. We love all of the yoga classes we go to.
Funny.
But yeah.
So I think just trusting again the space that was built between us.
Yep.
And then being like, oh, I actually have a lot of really nice bonds with people, but I don't trust, I guess, myself enough to throw some more of myself into the bond, and then it's realizing like the more that I do that, all of a sudden, the stronger these relationships become. And the more human I become, and the more like actual real life I'm involved in, as opposed to being in that like really heady space where the thoughts are prevalent and the structure and the mind and the logic. And if it doesn't make logical sense, then I'm not going to do it, as opposed to bringing the heart into the situation and bringing the body into the situation and being like, how do I feel about this?
Yeah.
And can I just express how I feel and have that, put that on the same level as like, well, my thoughts are this, this, this. And it's like, okay, well, my feelings are this, this, this. And one shouldn't take supremacy over the other.
Right. And and it's showing like actually like the utmost deserving of love. Like all of my feelings do make me worthy of love.
Right.
And I can share these, or I can share days where I'm going through a moment or whatever. And as Brene Brown would say, with the power of vulnerability, it's like the people who do share their vulnerability, it like reaffirms their worthiness, because they're like, I know that I'm worthy regardless if I share this or how someone else thinks of it.
Right.
And and they actually go hand in hand. Like you're knowing of being enough, and you're knowing of allowing yourself to be seen in the messy parts.
And then I think I just stopped policing myself so much. And then of course that just is so nice, because then I'm like the hyperactive brain that's like in fight or flight constantly, of like, are you saying the right thing? How are they reacting? How are they taking it? That part can be put to bed. And I'm just like, in the moment, it just is what it is.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Wow, how refreshing.
Yeah.
Just to recap too, because it's like, it sounds like the first part of your journey was using the stoicism. Lady Stoic, we're still waiting.
Back in the day.
Using the stoicism, using the super logical, like masculine, like you were saying, framework to help delineate different thoughts and like unlearn and repattern from like your cult, growing up, and like the beliefs that came with that. Yeah. And then it's sounding like the second part of your journey was like, once you had those like thought structures and frameworks, like actually breaking those down again, and like coming into like your heart and your feeling space, and like your feminine softness, like having developed like the masculine skills and structure to get out of the cult. Does that feel right?
It does feel right.
Yeah.
And there's so many layers in there, and nuances and contexts and everything. So sometimes I hesitate to use words like that, because then people just get crazy and take into their own context. But I think it was like growing up in the cult, everything was so emotional and authoritative. And those were the only two things that existed, was like batshit and authority. And so coming out of that, I was like, logic. And then realizing that I'm missing out on the human experience if the only thing that I'm chasing is logic. And the logic saved me from a lot of like the batshit and the authoritative stuff. And if I had listened to my heart, it would have led me there too. Because the things that are true in logic are also true in the heart. Like, there are hard truths that to be true, and it's complex and it's difficult, but something in you recognizes it as truth. And that is a valid thing to follow.
Absolutely.
So coming off of the sort of logical framework of life and stepping into more of the like, what does my body feel? What does my heart want? and following that, and then being like, oh, this is actually like severely easier. Like it's so much different. And I don't have to force myself to do things. I don't have to be harsh with myself of like, well, you said you wanted this, so now you have to do that. It's more of a like, hey, how do you feel? Do you need a day off? Do we still want this thing? Is it still, are we still going after it? Okay, then what's one thing we can do? And then I get myself a little treat when I'm done.
I love that. What's one thing you deserve it. You had a
Yeah,
good day.
exactly.
Can you kind of share like, yeah, where you are now, and then what we'll do is like maybe break down the arc for as a series of steps for the listener
Okay.
for their own journey, and
Okay.
lead them through a tiny little medi after
Where I am now is
that. Or right, 9 years into your 30th
nine.
decade.
Yeah, I know, crazy. Where I am now is focusing on connection to others, and sort of realizing like, what is it like to actually have the capacity to be myself with other people and to let other people be themselves? And can I hold those spaces without feeling like I need to react? Can I simply, like, something human in me connects to something human in you? And going back to those places where I felt the safest at any point in my life, it was when I knew the person sitting across from me also viewed me as a human being, and we were trying to share an experience, a human experience. They were sharing theirs, I was sharing mine. And those moments are really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
So how can I recreate the safety and the softness and love and connection in myself to then be able to open up and show that and share it with another human being? Because I know a lot of people, but I am not like connected to a lot of people. So now I'm at the space where I want to connect with other people. And it's like, how can I do that? And not only connecting with people that I deem worthy, but just, do I have the capacity to connect with people? So that's the space that we're in now.
I love that. And I love what you said about like creating the safety within yourself and the love within yourself. Cause it's like, yeah, it's like we can in some ways only connect with others to the extent that we've done it with ourselves. Doesn't have to be. I'm joking.
Put that on a sticker.
I know, right? That's like when, yeah, it's so funny, especially in like romantic relationships and whatnot. But all of that's to say, yeah, I love that you're like carving out time to do that, and then like approaching these like with so much, curiosity and humility, and like you said, like no ego of like who you're connecting with, but like what is like the depth of those connections beyond maybe like where the wall had been hit in the past.
Yeah. And I think also sometimes I worry that like, oh, if I'm connected to this person, then they'll need a little bit of my time. But if everybody needs a little bit of my time, then I'm going to be,
Yeah.
And it's like, why am I sort of imagining a future where I'm disappointing all these people?
Yeah. The future tripping.
Totally.
And like, also the fear of like, which is disempowering for us and them.
Yeah.
Right. Like that we wouldn't be able to put in boundaries for ourselves, and them that they would steamroll those boundaries, or that they wouldn't respect us. Yeah. And I love, or just as a point on that, one of my friends was sharing, like, sometimes I am super empathetic or feel a great responsibility when I'm like ushering a friend into a new experience. Yeah. Like taking friends to Burning Man. Right. And one of our friends got separated from us, who was new to Burning Man. Okay. And I was like, oh, I hope that like I had like this internal guilt for like a little bit of the night where I'm like, oh, I hope they're okay. Like, da-da-da. And my friend's like, in a way, it's like giving ourselves so much self-importance. Right. Of like, they're a grown, sovereign adult. Like, they will be fine. They'll be fine. And like, don't give yourself so much importance that like you being there or not will affect their night. Yeah. And so in a way, it's like freeing to trust in like the connections that we have, and then also like be in the present moment with like how it's unfolding versus like the future.
And I think just trust. Yeah. Trusting that like whatever happens, it'll be fine. Yeah. And you trust yourself, you trust them, you trust the moment. It's like, okay, then it's good.
Right. I
Yeah.
think that's the big, it's so funny. I'm like, Ram Dass was on to something. Be here now. Okay, we get it
All the
now.
sayings are true.
It's so true though, but it's like when you are just here now, there's actually like everything is so much more figure outable, as they say.
Completely.
And all things that need to be communicated or nourished in our
Mm.
relationship in the moment are like very
Yes.
clear in that
Yeah.
moment
Yeah, so
versus when
true.
we like, yeah,
When we're not here
yeah,
and we're like trying to control something in the past or something in the future, it's like,
yeah.
what for?
I love that, Angel. So it's really this beautiful arc of like building up, softening,
Well, it's
and then
so
expanding from the
interesting
inside
because
out.
like I thought that the rebuild was something that I would have to do once,
Yeah.
like leaving the cult and like tearing down the foundation and creating something new. I was like, great, cool, done it. Never have to do it again.
Now I just get to enjoy life.
Totally. From here on out, it's easy. And then realizing like honestly what a privilege it is to be able to tear down and rebuild over and over again, to have that capacity within
Mm,
yourself, because then so many things become possible.
yeah.
And so my life is like so sporadic and crazy, and I get these really insane opportunities to do so many things. But I think it's because of the work that I've done to not stay fixed.
Not to be like, I've done
Yeah,
it. I've reached
right.
the peak or
Totally.
I've
Or be like,
completed it.
this is not something that I'm interested in. This is something that I'm interested in. But just to greet things as they come with like a, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. How do I feel?
I love that
Yeah.
about you. And I will say, like, throughout the evolution of our friendship, I feel like I've gotten to see you go on so many like different internal
Iterations.
journeys, like dipping the toes into like plant medicine
Mm,
and like all these other
yeah.
things like before that you're like, oh, that's not for me. But then it's
Yeah.
like now I like never hear you say like that's just who I am. Like because
Right.
you're like, who knows who I am? Like
Who
let me try
knows?
this thing and
I
find
don't
out.
even know. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
Which
work in
is
progress
so cool because
or
I feel
play in
like
progress.
it gives us so much more like, yeah, you have like a very youthful energy because
Yeah.
you're always in that student mode, but then also like able to hold such like space and reverence as a teacher as well. So I think it's a really beautiful and powerful
Thank you.
combination
I
to
love
have
it.
that. And I completely agree, like nothing's ever fixed. And that bothers me
Yeah.
so much when I hear like people just be like, that's just how I am. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, that's your choice. It could also
Right.
not be how you are.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, all of that's to say, should we break it down for our
Let's do it.
listeners in some little steps and
Okay.
then a little angel Medi moment? So if the listener was like,
Hmm.
how do I like maybe they're leaving
Okay.
and it they're their metaphorical cult of sorts of their like
Yeah.
of a self-limiting belief
Okay.
of how they believe they are in relationships or whatever, like could you give us kind of like a few steps, kind of like the arc that you've gone through on your personal journey, just like maybe a thought and a question for like 3 or 4 kind of steps to start to like see and experience things in a
Yeah.
different way.
So I would say the easiest way to do it is to ask yourself an intelligent question, because the way that the brain works is just if you ask it a question, it looks for the answer,
Yeah. So what would
like
an
every
example
time.
of like an intelligent question be, like let's say like
So give me a scenario. If it's like, maybe it's like I'm not happy at my job anymore. What do I do?
I'm not happy at my job anymore, what do I do? Or like I could never make a lot of money or
Mm,
yeah. Or like
yeah,
I will I ever find love
you're right.
because I've only had shitty relationships that have left me.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, well, let's
Any one
pick
of
one of
those.
them.
Yeah.
Let's pick the love scenario because we all need love. Um, I feel like in that one, it would be important to challenge your beliefs of like, what kind of love do I think that I'm worthy of?
Mm,
Or like, what kind of love do I move towards? And what kind of love do I shy away from? And like, um, yeah, I think just asking yourself as many questions as possible just to texturize the experience because it's not black or white.
right.
And like
Just getting a lot of data points
data points and
with no
like,
judgment.
no, with like, what sort of relationship was my last relationship? What sort of relationship do I want moving forward? Or the same thing with your job. It's
Mm,
like, what are the high points of my job now? What are the low points? What's my dream job moving forward. And I just had this discussion with somebody earlier where I was like, what do you want to do? And they said, what, my dream is blank, blank, blank. And I was like, okay, what I know about myself is I love teaching. What I teach can change, but teaching is the thing that lights me up. And I found that out through this sort of work of like,
Right.
if I couldn't teach yoga, what else?
What I teach.
What else could I do?
Yeah.
And it just kept coming back to like, I love teaching. I love teaching. So I was like, okay, so then I don't need to be attached to the identity of like, I am a yoga teacher. I can teach anything, but I love teaching. So I want that to be built into the fabric of my life. So if you're at a point of trying to make a change or discover something new, it's like, well, find out about yourself, find out about what you can let go of, find out about what you're trying to reach for. See if you can track, like, for example, the belief of like, I'm never going to make a lot of money. Why do you think that? Like, where did you first hear that? Is it actually true? What if it wasn't true? What would you do?
Right.
Those
Who
type
would you
of
be
things.
without that
Right.
thought?
Exactly. Just to give your brain like different
Scenarios.
Because your brain is really intelligent and it goes where you guide it. So how can you start to navigate yourself towards a different sort of belief? And again, at the beginning, you're going to have to get in front of your thoughts.
Right.
You're going to have to just like railroad that thought through your brain.
Steamroll it.
Yeah. And just try and be in front of the thoughts that tell you whatever it is. But then those thoughts that come up of like, I'm worthy. And then it's like, no, you're not. It's like, okay, caught you. This thought of like, no, I'm not came up. Okay, where did that one come from? Where did I first hear that? Why is that here? What does it do for me? And then it's like, as you try and do this work, the useful thing also is catching the thoughts that resist you.
Right.
And seeing those.
Yeah. And just kind of interrogating
Totally.
them. So it sounds like the first part is like the audit.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
And then from the audit, it's like, what is like the shift or next step from there? And then how do you connect that to like the heart and the...
Well, I think then when you think about what you do want and you think about what is in the way, because something's always in the way. And spoiler alert, it's you.
It's me. Hi.
Exactly. Bringing it all the way back to Taylor.
Always.
But where was I? What was I saying?
So it's like, what is the block that's in the way?
Okay. Once you find that, then it's going into the body and speaking kindly to yourself. And if you were going to be your cheerleader and you were going to be supportive, then how would you speak to yourself? And how does it feel when you have negative thoughts about yourself? How does it feel when you have positive thoughts, or when you hear beautiful things about yourself, or when you actually love yourself? What does it look like?
Yeah.
What does it feel like to experience gratitude, not to think happy thoughts or think gratitude,
but to feel it on a visceral level.
And then that's where the body and the heart comes into play. And then once you get to know this like vessel, which is so intelligence, then you can start to tap into the vessel of the heart and the body, and it will tell you things before the thought comes up.
Yeah. And
it's sort of the thing that's so present that it's recognizing the energy in the room. It's recognizing it sort of knows what somebody's going to do or say energetically before it happens.
Yeah.
And that's the thing to attune to. So it's like getting through the thoughts that are in the way that keep you from being able to pay attention to your body, like to the actual vessel that is the thing that carries you through life, and to the thing that has all the information about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that. Yeah. Because it's like taking it through the audit, feeling it in your body, and then like kind of like what you were doing, like once you create that feeling of safety internally and are giving yourself that love, whether it's like sitting with yourself, sitting with your body, doing yoga, doing these practices that are breath work or meditation, self-massage, like things that get us into our body, then it's like kind of walking the fire with like actual things where we can feel it on a visceral level. And then day to day, like you were saying, with like opening yourself up to others, connecting with others, like getting, allowing yourself to be like vulnerable and exposed in like the daily life situations, like with the love example, like going on that date and putting yourself out there.
Because every time you do it, it feels vulnerable. But if you can understand like, okay, I feel vulnerable, but on a deeper level, like, yes, it's taking courage to do this because I've not done it before,
Mhm.
but on another level, I'm perfectly safe and I'm at peace
Yeah.
and I can be present and just experience whatever this is without taking it as a
Data point or
right,
like
without taking it as like
a vote
this
towards
makes
something.
me a yes, this makes me a no. And again, getting out of the black and white thinking and just like exist.
And how does it feel?
Yeah, and how do you feel?
I love that.
Yeah,
Amazing. Okay, wow. Well, should we seal it in with a little Medi?
let's do it.
Little Medi moment?
Let's do it.
Hey, I'm excited for
Are you
some.
gonna lead or am I leading?
I was gonna have you lead.
Okay.
Like, yeah, maybe like a little 2 or 3 minute thing that someone could listen to when
just like a
they're
walkthrough.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, little taste of what
Little
we just
moment.
talked about. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So comfortable seat, close your eyes, and then deep breath in, and then through the mouth. And then again, deep breath in, and then through the nose. And then deep breath in, and whichever way it wants to exit. And then easy in, and just start to not pay attention to the breath anymore. And then notice that the body will breathe for you. And if you just respond to what it wants, there's a natural rhythm that picks up. And then start to find the crown of your head and then reach it up a little bit so that your spine is straight. And then start to find where your sense of self begins to emanate from. Does it come from the head? Does it come from your heart, your chest? Does it come from your full body? Just search for that sense of self. If you can't find it, you can place it. You can pick a spot. And then start to take your thoughts, your brain, your mind, which is different from this sense of self, and start to draw the thinking mind deep into the skull. So it's like you're pulling away from the walls of your skull. And then you're going to take this little electrical ball of self-awareness and you're going to place it in the spot where you felt that self-awareness begin from. And then your thoughts will go silent and you're just going to listen and observe your body. Notice your heartbeat. Notice the warmth or the cold that you feel. Notice what your ears are hearing. Notice the bottom of your feet. Notice your knees, the back of your ears, your chest. Just experience yourself inside of the vessel and then wait and see if the vessel has a message for you. Notice your nervous system. Notice your breath. And then take your hands and place them somewhere on your body so that you can feel yourself and just have a moment thanking the body and everything that it contains. The heart, the mind, its ability to feel, its ability to intuit, and let yourself radiate gratitude. And then palms together to touch, thumbs up to your forehead. Gratitude to the body, to yourself, and everything that comes with that. And just bow forward and then come back up. Open your eyes and you can come back.
Wow. Transported.
Amazing.
into here, into my body. That was so great when you did the little thing with the brain, and now you have no thoughts. I was like, I felt like hypnotized. I'm like, where did they go?
It's so funny because we have so many thoughts all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was so great.
I love just trying to turn it off.
Yeah.
Just for like a second.
No, I felt so present, like everything you said about like my different body parts. I was like, wow, I'm here. And it was like,
crazy.
It's empty up there.
So
what did
nice.
Angel do? That was wonderful. Okay, well, where can people find you online, in person?
Okay, so the easiest way to find me is Instagram, and it's What is Angel Doing?
Best handle of all time.
Yeah, in case you ever wonder what is Angel doing.
You can find it out there.
And then everything will just go through there because, as you know, I make websites, I make email lists, and if it doesn't feel right, I don't go after it. I'm very willing to be like, it doesn't feel good, I'm going to leave it. I have to let it go. But Instagram, for some reason, is constant.
Yeah, it's where all of the Angel Magical lives.
Yeah, it's the funnel.
It's the funnel for the yoga, for the workshops, for all of it. Well, it's been such a huge honor to have you on. Angel's so special to me. She's been at my 30th birthday. She's led my wedding yoga on my wedding morning. We've been to the depths of Zion together. So it's so special to finally have you on the pod.
Yay, I know.
So
how
powerful.
Exciting.
Okay,
another one in the books.
Another one in the books. The Angel Mare Adventures continue. Watch the space. We hope this was valuable for all of you in building your own brain and building back thoughts that serve you. And we will see you next week for more powerful stuff. Yay. Hey, you. Thank you for coming on this powerful journey with me. I hope it was as powerful for you as it was for me. And if it was, it would mean the world to me if you rate, review, and subscribe to Powerful Stuff so I can keep bringing you the goods. We can keep going on this transformative journey together. And if there's powerful stuff that you want to share with me, with the Powerful Stuff community, tag us on Instagram at That's Powerful Stuff or the Meredith Baker. And I look forward to seeing you next week for more powerful